Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor to introduce this afternoon's keynote speaker, who is based in Shanghai, China, and literally flew halfway around the world to be with us this afternoon. He currently serves as President and Chief Executive Officer of PepsiCo's Greater China region. In Pepsi's global portfolio of food and beverage labels, PepsiCo has 22 different brands that generate more than $1 billion each in an annual retail sales. And a 20-year PepsiCo veteran, our next speaker was appointed to his role in September of 2014. He is responsible for PepsiCo's business encompassing beverages, foods, and dairy in China. He previously served as Senior Vice President and Chief Customer Officer for PepsiCo's North American beverages. Before joining PepsiCo, he attended the United States Naval Academy, earning a Bachelor's of Science in History, the University of Pennsylvania, where he graduated with a Master's of Science in Organizational Behavior, and perhaps most significantly, he served for 6 years as an officer in the Marine Corps. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce this afternoon's keynote speaker, Mr. Mike Spanos.
Am I on? Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. And first of all, I got to do a couple housekeeping notes. UCLA, are you here? The gentleman that? Okay, I got 3 bits of feedback for you. You were at the Forest. That was you at the Forest Hall last night that asked for that that weekend. Okay, number 1, I like your style. That was awesome. Okay, that was really good. Okay, and the mids like it. Number 2, a little coaching. At PepsiCo, we have a corporate governance policy that if you receive gifts or dollars more than $75, you're in conflict of interest. I'm assuming you got more than $75 worth of gifts and things from the mids after last night. So you may want to check the UCLA corporate governance policy. Number 3, did you get a coin this morning from the Commandant? You did. Okay, so the Commandant, Captain Byrne, I would have given you a little coaching. You might want to have checked in with the Commandant before you granted liberty for the weekend with General McChrystal. But what I understand is you should have gone to, because I've been doing a little technological login, you should have gone to King Byrne. Is that, I understand, the, is that the name? Let me tell you something. And by the way, for the record, Midshipman Michael Johnson did not divulge any gouge on, yes, the rumor is true. The Commandant, King Byrne, and I were roommates. What I would say, I think that was about Bill or Captain Byrne leveraging technology. I actually had this cool stereo with a cassette player, okay? And cassette players were hot then, so I think that's why he went with the short Greek guy, who later became the short, bald Greek guy down the road, okay? So anyway, good job there. And I did want to say thanks to everybody for having me, and it really is a privilege to be here. A couple housekeeping notes. First of all, really keep it down to earth. I prefer you call me Mike. I was going to say no secret filming because this is being filmed, so don't worry about it. You don't have to take out your iPhones or anything. I will ask for some participation. I don't ask trick questions. I was in the Marine Corps. I like simple questions with simple responses, and I use it to keep people active, especially after lunch. And the other thing is, it's okay to interrupt me and ask questions. We'll have a Q&A at the end, but if there's something you don't understand, ask a question. If you're Marine ground, you ask a second question. I'm going to probably ask you to talk to a nuke, and they'll work it through you on the side there, okay? Okay? And also, oh yeah, by the way, this is always goes, right? I know we got a few West Pointers here. Don't worry, I'm going to come back. A good friend of mine, Joe DePinto, who's a West Pointer, he runs 7-Eleven. I'm going to quote him later. He said, you just can't talk about these Army-Navy games we go to. He said, it's been too frustrating. But anyway, congratulations on 13. What I'm going to start with, and the way I want to set this up, I'm going to be pretty practical. I'm going to talk to those college grads that are at civilian colleges. I'm going to talk to the mids. I'm going to talk to you like what I think is practical knowledge around you hitting the fleet and you hitting your first job as a campus recruit, as we call it. And I'm going to give you a little bit of what I call the manual. And then when I go from the manual, I'm going to talk to you about how I think you got to apply technology, and I'm going to get to this in short order. The first thing, though, that I think is table stakes is leadership is a privilege. I don't care if you're using technology, you're not using technology. Most of you that are sitting in here, there's 9 or 10 people that would beg to be where you're sitting today, to be a leader of the finest people in our nation, whether it's a civilian organization or in the military. And all I ask is that you treat every day that you're leading our finest as a privilege. And as General McChrystal talked about last night, power can corrupt. Don't forget your humble beginnings. And as you use technology, it can become a temptation. Be careful it doesn't lead you astray, would be my guidance across the board, whether you're using technology or not using technology. If you remember leadership as a privilege and not an entitlement, you'll do real well out there, okay, because you learn great things here. All right, so this was the brief I was given, and I'm going to let this sit up here, and y'all can look at this. And I bolded a few words. I'm going to ask for a little bit of participation here. But the question was, how does a leader embrace the interconnectivity of today's world while creating a culture of trust and authenticity amongst her followers? So ultimately, how does a leader leverage technology to influence culture and inspire the members of the organization? So let's start with leaders. You can just shout out answers. What does leader or leadership mean to you when you hear that? We throw those words around a lot. What does it mean? Anyone? Okay, I'm sorry? Power? Selfless. Very good. Selfless. Keep going. Good. I'm sorry? Responsible. That's right. Say again? I couldn't hear you. Caring. That's right. Very good. I heard some responses over here. Inspiring. Inspiring. Very good. What's inspiring mean? What's inspiring mean to you in the heart when somebody inspires you? Simple. Motivate. Good word. Stir. Evoke. Stimulate. Big words, okay? What's authentic? Somebody said selfless over there. That was a good word. What's authentic leadership indicate? When you think about authentic leaders, what does that mean? Sincere. And how does an authentic leader drive sincerity? That's good. I'm sorry? Trust. Very good. And how do you drive trust? Vulnerability, self-awareness, openness, okay? All very good, okay? So now, as we move to that, that's right. When I think about technology and what you're thinking about as leaders, the way I look at this is you're all trained to deliver results. You're all trained to deliver results through a great team. And you're all trained to not only have a great team, but have a foundation of shared values. General McChrystal talked about that last night as well, okay? So to me, when I think about leaders and leadership and authentic leadership, this is the stuff I think about. You're a leader, you're a guide, you're a director. You're not a dictator, you're not telling people what to do. And when you lead, leadership is a process of influence, social influence. Social influence means interaction. And to interact as a leader, you got to develop trust, you got to develop relationships. You've got to enlist. What's enlist mean? When you enlist in the military, what are you doing? Anyone? Volunteering. You're volunteering, you're not being mandated. So you are signing up for something you believe in. You are signing up for a cause. And you're signing up to deliver an objective, a task, a vision, because you are enlisted in it and you believe in it. And as a leader, you got to persuade folks many times with facts and relationship to get it done. Authentic leadership, I heard that, it was really good. To me, it's about legitimacy through honest relationships. Valuing input, I heard self-awareness, I heard selfless. Openness, trust, somebody said that over here, that was great. The key though is authentic leaders, look, they're about capability. They're about driving individual and team capability. Make no mistake about it. So the fact is, they're there with you. And I was, all kidding aside, I was teasing my prior roommate, but as I was talking to some of the mids, Bill, I'll say this to you. This is a great authentic leader. I lived with this guy for 3 years, okay? He's nothing's changed. But the examples I've heard from the mids is Captain Burns in the same weight room we are. Okay? So you're there with your people, you show example, you show you're there with your people. You're not familiar, but you're there with them. You inspire, you motivate, and you build that loyalty and trust when you're there with your people and your troops. It's big. Now, influence and inspire. A couple of you said this. This, to me, regardless of the technology, this is where the rubber meets the road. So some of you talked about it. Influencing, to me, is about two simple levers. It's about relationships, it's about data. Winning over with facts so people come on board with yours. And most of the influence leadership is this way, it's horizontally. Most of you are going to do great what I call vertically as leaders. What do I mean by that? You're good about lining up with your bosses or your supervisors, unless they ask you to do something you don't believe is ethical, and you're going to always be good about taking care of your people. In more matrix organizations, which are driven with more technology, you're going to need to know how to go horizontally and get your peers on board and functional folks that aren't always going to be aligned. That is going to be what I found the biggest Achilles heel of evolving leaders at the most senior levels is when they cannot influence lead collaboratively with relationship and trust. That's typically what I see. Inspire, many of you mentioned this. This is really where you get into the heart of leadership. A lot of people talk about head, heart, and hands leadership, okay? With hands being the doing, head being a lot of the thinking, heart is the emotion. That hasn't gone away, folks. How you inspire, how you evoke emotion, how you stimulate is critical, and I'll give you some examples of that. Okay, so let's talk about culture, which is part of the brief. What's culture? When you hear the term culture, what's that mean to you? What's culture? Traditions, very good. What else? Background, bringing, society, beliefs, very good. What else? Values, excellent. What else? Social what? That's right, social norms, very good. What else? Say again? That's right, morals, values. Okay, attitudes, behaviors. Okay, when you look at culture, it's the sum of that. And it's what distinguishes group. By the way, within organizations, you can have microcosms of culture. Okay, so for example, I was in the Marine Corps. I spent time with the grunts, and I was an artillery officer. I would argue there was a different culture I felt with 2nd Light Armored Infantry when I was assigned to them that was a little bit different than 10th Marines. And when I served at the Field Artillery School, there was a bit of a different culture there. No different than within PepsiCo. There's a bit of a sales culture versus maybe other functions of the organization. That's okay. You've got to be able to understand that. But the key is, it comes actually, the term culture actually comes from Romans. Cicero would talk about cultura animi, which is basically cultivation of the soul. So there's a point here. It's about the inspiration around what it means. What is important for you as leaders with technology? You must keep your pulse on the culture of an organization. You must monitor it, you must score it, and you can actually do it with technology, understand how people are feeling about the organization and giving you feedback, and you need to act on that feedback. Critical that you stay close to that. All right? So to me, the way I sum it up is, when I think about a winning culture, and I'm going to now start transitioning to how I think you can apply technology to this, I've always found it simply in about 3 buckets, okay? Number 1 is, I believe you are there, and you are here, we are here to lead outstanding results for your organizations. And I'm unapologetic, and I have been unapologetic throughout my time both with PepsiCo. I've been blessed to have time there, as well as I was blessed to be in the Marine Corps and lead some of the finest young people that I've ever met in my life. I was never apologetic about leading the best results. And the reason is, you've got to do it based on what you learn here. You build a great, highly capable team, and you make sure you got great individuals, but those individuals are also a fit culturally on your team, and that team meshes together. And you are selfless, you are about the team delivering, and you are not about yourself delivering. You will get the recognition if that team delivers. And the foundation, General McChrystal mentioned this term last night, and I heard it this morning, was shared values. Those values of inclusion, diversity, integrity, that are critical, the things that you can build trust on with one another are important. And that's the thing when you measure your culture with organizational health surveys or others, you've got to know the pulse of how you're doing across this. Now, if you notice, I haven't really talked that much about the technology. And the reason is, as someone once told me in the Marine Corps, when I was a young artillery officer, garbage in equals garbage out. Okay, so when I started out, we had a bunch of computer systems, backup systems, and we also had manual slide rules. And I will tell you that I was told by a gunnery sergeant, he said, listen, that computer system looks good, but if you don't know what you're doing All you're going to do is output in a very automated manner a major mistake that can cost people their lives. And I will tell you, I've learned one thing about focusing on the fundamentals. In my world of PepsiCo, I have absolutely had to write out a handwritten invoice at one time or another. Despite all the technology we have with automated ship notification, there is a point in time somebody's got to get product, and it's on a weekend. I may be using a handwritten invoice, getting a signature, and then we're going to double back to get an automated invoice that next week. When I was in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, we conducted fire missions at one point with a slide rule, despite the fact we had technology. Okay? Despite the fact that our battery got GPS, when my CO got stranded in a minefield, I was using a compass from Saigon Sam's and a protractor on a map to make sure our fire and battery got to the next location. Because there will be points in time, regardless of your amount of technology, at that moment, at that time, you will not have access to that technology, but you will need to get the job done. You will execute the mission. That's the bottom line. I don't care if you're a civilian, I don't care if you're a junior officer. Okay, so let me shift with that to how I think about how leaders leverage technology within that framework of culture, how do you influence and how do you inspire. And I'm going to really get to the influence piece here. So you're going to see me spend time on influence, then I'm going to go to inspire, all right? So influence, this has always been the guidance I've given folks around how I feel about embracing technology, okay? The first is, I talk about stealth brands. One of the things with technology, the traditional model of building brands and building businesses is completely outdated. Anyone who wants to start a business can start that business. And in China, you've all heard about Alibaba. They've got a portal, it's called Tmall. Tmall is a site where you can just put your product on there, people can order from it, and you ship to a distribution center if you have an idea. There are multiple examples of individuals with $200 and $300 million businesses they have launched. Stealth brands, not traditional advertising, and they're on their game. Okay, that is not changing. So what I tell people is you got to get used to that, and we've got to play the same game. The second is, because of technology, you got to accept that things that historically lasted a long time, the product life cycles are going to shrink because the consumer is under constant fatigue. They're giving so many attractions that they'll just cycle out of things faster than they used to. In addition to that, your innovation has got to be more incremental and transformational, because if it isn't, you're going to drive a ton of complexity costs into your value chain, and you're going to struggle to drive true profitability of what you bring to the business. It's going to make you be sharper. It's going to make you be much more consumer-centric versus company-centric, which is just the reality. The other piece, which I've seen, my observation, I believe data as a leader can be a great enabler to drive a more diverse, inclusive, object leadership environment. Okay? So I studied a lot of organizational behavior in the past. And I would say the opposite of objective is what? What's the opposite of objective? Subjective. Okay? That could mean, wow, you hit a really good golf drive. I really like you. So therefore, as I spend more time with you on the golf course and I get to know you, you might be the person I want to promote versus you're delivering the best results based on the scorecards, based on the priorities of the organization. I know you should be actually the person that gets promoted. What I've observed is the technology has increased in our organization. We are far more objective, far more process-centric, and I think that can be your friend as you drive the culture of inclusion, diversity, and capability across different styles. And the other thing is failing fast. General McChrystal talked about this last night about mistakes. My point is, in this environment, you got to be willing to go. You're going to make mistakes. My guidance to you is use the first person. When you go to your boss and you make a mistake, you're failing fast in this environment, don't say we, they. Say, look, I made the call. I am accountable. My team, we knew what we did wrong, but I made the call. I made the mistake, and I know what we need to do to fix it. We're going to move on. Don't deflect it. Don't say we, they, this third person. Indra Nooyi, our chairman, she's mad. I've never seen, she will talk about this all the time, is take the ownership of the mistakes. It's okay, and then move on. So you got to embrace this culture of it's fast. It's moving, and you got to be okay moving fast. The piece of this I talked about is what I've told people about technologies and influence is you got to allow the consumer to be in charge. The consumer is king. And the example I showed you here is one of the things we've been able to do is we have consumers, they actively engage with us on brands. Gatorade's a good example. We have consumers, they're involved in our Sports Science Institute, and they're telling us what they want, They're telling us where they're buying Gatorade. They're telling us when they're buying Gatorade. They're telling us what kind of improvements they want to make to it. And what's happened is the way they're buying is completely different than when I started with the organization 21 years ago. Before, you had stores that weren't even open on Saturdays and Sundays. Now you got people buying product at 11 o'clock at night on Amazon. They're going to different places and they're shifting their patterns. We've got to follow the consumer. And although it's easy to look internally to the organization, we've got to look externally to the consumer because the consumer is in charge. So that's the first thing I tell people is you better embrace the fact that the consumer is king. That's just the way it is, whether you like it or not. The second thing, which is this picture of me, the other way I like to influence technology is I like to use it as a social energy enabler or explain the why. So I do town halls. We like to do town halls once a quarter. A town hall is we'll do a podcast. We'll get out to thousands of people live. We'll have about 100 or 200 people live, and we'll hit 3 topics typically in a town hall. Business results, we'll do reward and recognition so everybody can see it, and then we'll go deep on one topic that's a hot button for the organization in the org health surveys or we know is important to our people. And we do that every quarter. Okay? And what we'll also do is we'll take live questions during those sessions. People can ask live, they can email in their questions, they can call in, or they can send them in advance, and we allow it anonymously to promote the openness. The other piece we do is we'll send out monthly newsletters. I really recommend this. The more you can use technology as a communication platform, it can be a big positive. We do monthly newsletters, same thing. We talk about business, we do reward and recognition, we do training in it, we allow people to get to know each other. Think about your communication plan as a leader by leveraging technology in a positive way. It can get you a lot of ground to explain to people why what you're asking them to do is important for them to do. It creates the enlistment, the voluntary aspect of them following your lead. The other piece I will tell people, I'll warn you about technology, and I'll tell you a quick story about one of the guys that I work with about how he's done this, is make sure your technology is about productivity. Make sure your technology is about tools. And so a few examples here. I think, first of all, when you start here, you got to make sure you're getting input from your front line. The example on the left called sales transformation, I'll tell you a quick story. We thought we were really smart for about 7 or 8 years with technology coming to our people, okay? So our salespeople, finally through our org health surveys, told us about 3 years ago, they said, I'm spending 70% of my time in the office. We were flabbergasted. We said, you're salespeople, you should be out in the market 80% of the time. Well, they said, well, here's the deal. I've got all these systems I've got to populate. I get one from forecasting. I've got one I got to fill out for the customer. I got one for finance. I got one for logistics. I'm spending almost 15 to 20 hours a week doing inputs into siloed technological solutions. None of them are integrated. So as we got these org health surveys, we were blown away. We said, we cannot believe this. So then what we did is we had 40, 50 people come in and we interviewed them live, completely consistent with what we got in the org health surveys. Everybody had positive intentions of the technology they were adding, and within that corridor, it made 100% sense. But the frontline end user, it was not user-friendly. So Dave Dempsey, one of the guys that works with, okay, and I'll tell you, Dave's about 55, he's never a technological hound. He embraced this feedback. He said, we're gonna integrate this. So he developed a tool that effectively, we call it sales transformation, that integrated all these tools, and we basically went to the board and said, here's the investment, but here's what we're gonna do with that investment. We're gonna get a return because we're gonna free up 12 hours a week for our salespeople. We're gonna use that time, we're gonna redeploy them against business opportunities, so we're gonna drive incremental revenue. Also, we got a bunch of costs we're dumping into IT or information technology, maintain these systems, we're gonna shut them down. We only have to do IT on one set of systems. And then lastly, what we're gonna be able to do is we're actually gonna be able to take a leverage buy to get everybody an iPad on the front line. We can eliminate all the paperwork of binders. So as we do this, we can have everything there for them right at their fingertips at the store level. If we had not had our pulse on our people, we would have not known that. We would have not known that some of the technology we're giving them was non-value added. It was important we had to listen to the front line and we had to integrate that as well. The other piece I showed up here is training. You can use technology as a good leverage on training. Be efficient, you can reduce the travel, you can reduce the lack of balance at home. I usually like if something's inside of an hour and it's a course that you can get done where you're really educating your folks, You can knock it out, make sure they comply with it, get it done electronically, they can do it at their home. It's actually a positive morale lift as well. We do the same thing with telepresence. We try to reduce travel, let people be home more at night with their families. So we try to use technology as a balance enabler as well. The other thing on technology, it's about setting targets, keeping score and winning. That's about objectivity. And what do I mean about that is measure what is important, that is critical as a leader, define which scorecards you need, look at your priorities. You will win people over with data as you create an objective culture. Don't have a million scorecards, decide what the big 3 or 4 are. And by the way, I call this, the friendly competition. It's good to let people know how they're doing against one another in a positive way. It creates good energy, it keeps people competitive, and that's good team environment. It raises everybody's game. I already talked about the org health surveys. This is actually off of one of our sites about what org health survey is. We do them every other year, and we get about 98%, actually almost usually about 98% of our people. We do it with all employees. It takes them about an hour. We ask them lots of questions. We then, every other year, we do what we call an electronic pulse survey. And what we do is, by work group, we cut the data. We know by work group, by leader, what's the feedback across the organization. Career, how they feel about their boss, how they feel about our priorities are, how they feel about our social responsibility, you name it, we ask the question. We then ask people to develop work plans. And we ask the employees to lead the work plans. And we say, you're going to pick the top 2 biggest things you want to fix within your work group. You're going to lead the work, and we're going to facilitate what you want to do. And I will tell you that sales transformation, the one I just showed you, that was one of the follow-ups. The year after we implemented that sales transformation, the org health numbers in our sales group went up 20 points. People rewarded us for putting the resources against what they said was relevant. Okay? So use technology to keep a pulse on the organization's culture. Okay, I do think that's important. You got to really stay close to that. Before I go into Inspire, I want to just close out Influence. A couple guides I'd give you. This is, again, this is my opinion. With technology, people tend to blow a lot of data at you. I see a lot of long emails. The first CEO I worked with, I got some coaching before I went in his office from somebody. He said, never go in there with more than 1 page. I said, you got to be kidding me. He said, I'm telling you, do not go in there with more than 1 page. That guy gets so much data, so much reports. You go in there 1 page, you tell him what the situation is, what the issues, you tell them what the implications and choices are, and you give a recommended action plan. They want more data, they're going to ask you for it. You synthesize that data into one so you can give them the power statement, the concise delivery they need. Otherwise, they're swimming in data, which is very frustrating. I'm a big believer on emails, stick to 3 lines. And if you need more, tell people you're giving them backup or let them ask you for more. People don't have time for it. A lot of data. And I would tell you, don't replace a phone call or a meeting with an email. And I'll get to that a little bit later. Okay? So let's talk about technology as a negative. Has anyone, these are angry people here, okay? So has anyone ever wanted to hit the send button on a nasty email? Okay, put your hands up. Has anyone ever sent an email, about 5 minutes later you said, oh, I really should not have sent that email. That was a bad move, okay? All of us have done it. Here's what I would tell you. I follow my wife's advice, okay? Which is, before you send that angry email, I would think about, have I slept enough? Am I balanced enough? And do I want to call that person? That would be my guidance. The other piece of technology I'd ask you to watch out is make sure your technology at work is a tool and not a toy. This is kind of a simple survey of what people do at work with technology. I didn't know this, but people are conducting auctions. They're also looking for jobs. They're doing all sorts of things with company websites. Okay? What I would caution you on, and I've seen this over the years, is people add technology as a nice to do versus an absolute tool that gets the job done. I'm not anti-technology. I would just caution you to make sure you know what that technology, and training by the way, what is the absolute benefit that you are delivering with that technology. If it doesn't link to the mission of what you're trying to accomplish, you've got to ask yourself how it's going to be utilized, because the reality is you give somebody something, they're going to use it. The other piece I would warn you about with technology is, this is an example when we're out in the trade. I've always had, about three guidance on how I think about using technology or how to come to decisions. The first is you're going to get a lot of data, all right? The second thing is, what I'm showing you here is, I always like to see it with my eyeballs. You got to inspect what you expect in the marketplace. So you better get out there, you better visually see what you're seeing in reports. The other thing I like to do is I like to talk to consumers and customers and constituents. And then I triangulate a lot of the technology with what I'm visually seeing and what I'm hearing. Because what I've learned is, I tell our marketing team, I've never seen a consumer survey or a pulse survey on a new brand that says it's bad. But yet, so many of them fail. So why is that? If I'm getting all this data in that says this is a home run brand, but a bunch of them are not doing well, there's something we're missing in the data. What is it? So you got to filter through that data. Okay, I already talked about this on the nasty emails and all. I give you my last bit of technology warning before I talk about Inspire here is, what's in it for you folks is when you go negative electronically, you're going to spend a lot of time on damage control. The other thing I really want to stress here, which I haven't talked about, is this. You can go 24/7 with the tools you have. You're going to have to spend time on idea leadership. As a leader, you got to have think time. You got to spend time making sure you're thinking, reflecting, and spending incubation time where you really think, you really feel, other than just doing. And that is hard. You got to contract with your boss, but you're going to need to do that to be a big time leader. The other thing is, from a balance standpoint, if you don't do it, you will never be there for your family or listening, would be my guidance. Okay? So I want to talk a bit about inspiring. I'm going to use a couple examples here because I'll tell you right up front. I think to inspire your people, you're going to have to understand that despite all the technology, you still got to touch them, okay? And so I'll give you this example. This is our chairman, Indra Nui, okay? And actually, she was your first round draft pick to be here, but she was at Davos, okay? So I'm here, all right? But it's okay, as I've learned in my life, you always don't have to be the first choice of the prom. You just got to show up at the prom sometimes, okay? So well, let me tell you about Indra. Back in 2010, I was selected to be part, and this may be a little tough for me, but I'm gonna talk about this because this is important for you to understand what touch does. So in 2010, I was selected to be part of a leadership program. I was just coming out of a vice president role in the organization, and got this note, said you're going to be one of 12 people, and you're going to spend three days with the chairman. So first thing, we're like, okay, what kind of reports do we have to do? What kind of stuff do we have to do? What kind of decks, whatever? They're like, nothing. You come with a notepad, you come with a paper, and you just come prepared to talk about yourself. We're like, come on, there's got to be more. Nope, that's it. And you're going to be in this house. It's kind of, we got this place, and you're going to just like sit on the couch, and you're going to talk to Indra. I'm like, that can't be possible, okay? So we sit down. Sure enough, Indra sits down with us. She says, look, I just want to know about you. So one by one, she talks to us. She said, I want to know where you grew up. I want to know who you are from where you grew up to why you're here. Tell me about your families if you want to. Tell me about everything that inspires you, motivates you. So this was an interesting time for me, okay, at this time in 2010. I'll tell you what was going on with me personally and professionally. And what was going on with the company. You can go back in the history archives. For Indra to invest this kind of time at that time was pretty amazing, given what was going on with the broader perspective of our organization. I'm not going to get into that. You can, read the history. But let's just say she was busy running a $66 billion organization with a lot of people giving her a lot of opinions, okay? So that's point one. For me, I had just moved my family from Florida to New York, okay? That was the fourth move in 8 years, by the way, okay? So I had a son, who's now 20, who was not pleased with leaving his middle school buddies in Florida to go to New York. Okay, nothing against New York, but he was not happy. So I was dealing with that. Number two, after I'd made the move to New York, I lost my father, and my mom was dealing with that after they'd been married 52 years. So I had a lot of guilt between my son and the fact that my mom was by herself now in Florida, ironically after I had been working in Florida 20 minutes from where my mother lived. Okay, so that was real hard for me. That was kind of the next whammy. In addition to that, I was on the bottling side, PepsiCo had acquired us. I actually believed in that acquisition. I had started out with PepsiCo. But nonetheless, I was the acquiree. And I had just gone to New York the year before as the head of sales for the bottler, but suddenly we had a whole new company that was in charge. So for me professionally, I was trying to figure out, hey, where do I stand in this whole thing? So I shared, as we went through this, we talked a lot about our past and our experiences. I got a call 2 weeks later from my mom. And my mom was in tears. I said, Mom, what's wrong? And she was still struggling with the death of my father. She said, I got this unbelievable handwritten thank you note from Indra Nooyi. And she said, she just thanked me for everything for raising you. And she gave her sympathies to losing my father. And she just wanted to know she was really supportive of the family. So, wow. So my mom said, I'm putting that in our Bible. She said, I'm going to keep that with me always. My wife calls me 2 days later. I got a handwritten thank you note from Indra. I said, you got to be kidding me. She said, no, she's just asking how David was doing. She knows he just made the move to New York. How's he doing? And she knows that she's made a total of 16 moves with you since the Marine Corps and PepsiCo. And she wanted to say thank you because she said that she knows you've given a lot on your teaching career supporting Mike, and she knows Mike's focused at work because you're taking care of business at home with the 3 boys. Let me tell you, that inspired a whole lot of emotion with me. That inspired a whole lot of loyalty with me. And let me tell you, Indra is tough. She's a brilliant lady. But I'll tell you what, 2 weeks after that thank you note, yeah, she was kicking my butt at a period operating review when she didn't like the numbers and the market share. She was firm, she was fair, but she was friendly. But I knew when she had to be tough, but the fact she took that time to send those handwritten thank you notes, I knew that was a testament she believed in me. Okay, now after that, I've written thank you notes. I write about 1 a week. And I can't tell you how many people come up to me and say, and the thank you notes aren't false thank you notes, they're things I observed. I can't tell you how many times I have people come up to me and say, I've got your thank you note on my desk. I've got your thank you note framed. It inspires people. Okay, this is my other boss. I just worked for 3 years. Al actually went to Maryland. He ran a 406 mile, by the way, at Maryland back in the 70s, okay? All right, this is one of the most positive guys I've ever seen. Al's another guy who inspires. And he tells me, by the way, he worked for a Marine captain when he first started Procter & Gamble. So, he always tells me those stories. But the bottom line with Al is, Al's a believer in meaningful feedback, but Al inspires you with meaningful feedback by the power of a story. What Al tells you is he will give you stories face-to-face, sitting down with you one-on-one, no phones. He will tell you a story of when you are at your best. Okay, so many of us, when we give feedback, we start with, hey, these are the 5 things you did wrong. This is what you got to improve, right? I know I've done that over the years, right? He doesn't do that. He starts with Mike. When you did this, you were in the zone. Okay, Coach O, you're here. It's almost like, when we talked about tennis, when you were playing your best match. This is what you did. And that's what he does. And by doing that, he also unravels what you don't do so well. But you can't have that kind of impact without doing it face-to-face, without touching that person, seeing their body language, and watching them. Another one, this is a story. Actually, I didn't know somebody took this picture. This is a guy named Dr. Sao. He runs our Quaker business in Taiwan. He developed this from 0 to today. Our Quaker business in Taiwan is about $600 million, okay? It's an amazing guy. Are there any computers here? Are there any iPhones here? Okay, we're just sitting down having a cup of coffee. Let me explain something to you. The way you build trust, folks, people make decisions based on 2 really big things: personal wins and business results. At the end of the day, that's what motivates them. They only get to those things openly and honestly with you face to face. Your frontline soldiers, Marines, sailors, airmen, your route sales people, whatever, they will really only open up to you when you develop that trust and you build it face to face and they're feeling you there with them, okay? I will tell you, I've called on many CEOs of companies. And I'm not saying that in a grandiose way. I'm just telling you, the last job I was in for this now, I deal with partners that are worth lots of money. To General McChrystal's point last night, a lot of supposedly powerful figures. What I notice with them is they come down to trust in face-to-face. By the way, let me explain to you, when you're face-to-face with a big-time CEO or somebody else, it is full contact mental karate that is going on, okay? I assure you, you better go in prepared. It is full contact mental karate. However, your ability to deal with that face-to-face and engage with somebody unlocks decisions, it unlocks trust, and it unlocks commitments. You won't get that transaction in office. You won't get that in a boardroom with multiple people that are there posturing. You only get it like this: dinners, social events where people open up. This is the other thing I talk about inspiring is use technology is. This is one of our town halls. Okay, this is a couple people, Whittle Chen and Carl Liu. They are pumped, man. This is on a podcast. They got thousands of their buds seeing them being recognized. We launched a cereal product drink in China. Went from a 0 share to a 7 share and about a $2 billion category. You can do the math. They're like the whole team, R&D, all the way up to the salespeople. They are part of a Performance with Purpose award. They might get an award going to New York. They got this award. They're pumped because they know every one of their friends knows they're being recognized by us publicly. And it's on a podcast. So use technology to inspire. You can do it in a positive way without killing folks. This picture, this is my wife. This is my cool wife. And there's a reason I got this picture up, okay? So this is my wife of 26 years, Jerry. And actually, we met here at the Naval Academy. And the reason I'm showing you this, when I went to China, people said, hey, you're the new American. Part of the monthly e-newsletter, people need to get to know you. And culturally, what's important, people want to know about your family. They want to know about your background. They got to know you because you're not Chinese. And they want to know. So what we did was, a head of HR said, look, if you're okay with it, you got to let them know. Let them be friendly. You don't want to get familiar, but it's okay. If you're okay with it, we got to let them know who you are. So I said, hey, this is a picture of my wife. And they're like, great. They need to understand. They want to see who you are, who your family is, why you're here. They want to know that you have soul in helping make their lives better. And as they get to know you and the fact your parents evolved from Greece and other things, they're going to trust you. They got to get to know you. Okay? So what I tell you is, again, friendly good, familiar bad, but you got to be willing to open up so people get to know you. Okay, so I've talked about this a lot with technology. Someone once said to me, relationships matter, and they matter a lot. Let me tell you something. If you got a tough issue with somebody, just like a loved one, I'm telling you, go face-to-face with them, folks. I'm not telling you to disregard technology, but you better go face-to-face. Okay, so as I wrap up, I'm going to actually, for the West Pointers out there, I know I give you a hard time on the Go Navy, Beat Army, but I'm going to quote a good friend of mine who is a West Point grad. He's a good friend of mine. So Joe DePinto, who runs 7-Eleven, Joe and I have become very good friends over the years. And Joe's been a great mentor to me. And one thing Joe says, he's one of the most authentic leaders I've ever met. He's such a servant leader. He talks about, his simple mantra is serve, lead, do what is right. Okay? And so when you think about leadership as a privilege, it is about serving your people, it's about leading your people, and it's about doing what is right. And what I will say to you, and I will say this about technology, I have seen, you're in an environment, all of you are in an environment that talks about do not lie, steal, or cheat, or do unethical things. I have seen too many people tempted through their power, through their ambitions, and technology only makes that temptation all more accessible, okay? And I won't get into gory details, but one thing I found with technology, it allows access to things you don't want to have. And what I would coach all of you is, if you remember leadership as a privilege and you remember to be serve, leading, and doing what is right, you will stay the course in the culture that are here. Because if you don't stay with folks like this, you can run astray, you can run aground. All right? And so I'm giving you a little bit of preventive medicine. Please understand it's meant in the most positive light. But I would say with technology, watch it, because you can go the wrong direction. Okay? So I'm going to take questions. I appreciate your time, and I thank you for the honor of being here today. Hey, is that Midshipman Raymond here last night? The guy that, he has some tough questions. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, Mike. Thank you, and I appreciate your time and insight on this. So over the years, you hear a lot from companies that the bottom line is a figure, a money figure. But in recent years, we have business leaders like Elon Musk who have publicly released patents from Tesla Motors in order to encourage innovation through competition. So my question is this: should companies focus on that bottom line dollar and sort of monopolize on that innovation, or should we follow the example of Elon Musk?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I think where it's going is, first of all, a company is never going to be able to sustain. Let me start with this. Number one, a company is never going to be able to sustain a bottom line unless you do it the right way. All right, you can get short term, you can get long term. If you're going to build sustained results, you've got to build them in a way where you give back in a lot of ways. Okay, that's number one. Number two, what you'll find is most patents and innovation now, there's a period of time where they wear off anyway. Okay. And I would say one of the tricky parts of technology is people are able to figure your products out fairly quickly, okay? So as far as going down the road of Elon Musk in our industry, we haven't gone that direction. And there's actually some reasons for that. The main reason is the investment we put into R&D. We are using R&D as a big technological competitive advantage. I can't really get into that stuff right now. But we think it's breakthrough, especially as we're looking at some consumer types of products. But the reality is with technology, your stuff is not out there very long before somebody else has got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes?
Hi, Rafin Farouk, a senior at Southern Methodist University. 2 summers ago, I was in a rural village in India, and in a place where you don't have functioning roads or running electricity or stable water supplies, you could still get a cold bottle of soda. And I was wondering if you could give us kind of a 30,000-foot view of the strategies you all use in China to access markets that have been traditionally inaccessible.
Right. It's a great question, and I'm glad you asked a question about India. Part of our performance with a purpose is about social sustainability. We actually have reduced, India specifically, we just reduced our water usage by over 25%. So the reasons is for what you're speaking to. We know, and our employees, by the way, are telling us, it is important to them about how we think about social responsibility. So many things that we are doing are around water conservation, we're doing things around calorie reductions, we're doing things around fat reductions, and you'll see our product innovation is moving where the consumer is. So there's nothing we do in a country without the alignment of the government and the equivalent of FDAs, because we know what happens is our employees don't feel good about it, as well as the country doesn't feel good about it. So India is an example. We've taken out, it's actually a little over 25% of the water usage on beverages, as an example. And we'll stick to it. Thank you.
Hi, Mike. Winona DeSombre, and I'm from Tufts University, but I grew up in Hong Kong.
Great.
And as they say in a lot of businesses, in negotiating with the Chinese, a lot of important things happen in the last 5 minutes in negotiations.
Yes.
And a question for related to that, is there anything you've needed to change in your leadership style abroad to enlist supporters? And how can one be an effective leader while maneuvering the extremely different cultures at home and abroad to bring in customers or in negotiations?
It's a great question. The simple answer I would give is okay, this is a bit of a stereotype, but I'll say it like this. I've had to deal more with content, okay? There's content and there's context, all right? In the world of what I'd say North America Western, I can be more content driven in the way I negotiate. I've had to be more context driven, and relationships, as big as I thought I drove relationships here, the relationships I've got to cultivate there are far deeper for people to develop trust. And by the way, I've only been there 4 months. So for me, the learning lesson is you've got to be very patient and you've got to develop the trust if you're going to get things done on the long haul there. And it's very cultural as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mike. My name is
Hi.
Pranshu. I'm a senior at the University of Pennsylvania, so it's good to see the connection
Excellent.
there. And my question is about the spread of data in organizations from a bit of an organizational design and behavior perspective. A lot of organizations these days are making information silos in their companies, similar to how you have a marketing vertical or finance vertical. They also have an information and data vertical.
Exactly.
Do you think that's the right approach versus having data teams within all of the existing verticals of marketing and operations?
Yeah, so the question is, you're saying, hey, do you let every silo have their data?
Exactly.
It's actually a very relevant question. I'm having a bit of this debate right now with our team, with our marketing team, and what we call our shopper insights, consumer insights. Here's the answer I would give you. What I have told folks is I believe, from a cost standpoint and a relevance standpoint, we do need to evolve to one set of consumer data, okay? Now, having said that, as you look at that, there's different applications of that data. And so we have evolved off of that versus what is consumer-centric versus what is shopper-centric. There's actually a little bit of a nuance there. So what we've tried to do is leverage as much more and more, we're able to collect our own data, which we've tried more and more to do versus buying data. Okay, so that's probably the first thing we figured out is we can now have access from our consumers, and we do that. Now, the exception to what I'm saying is the data within certain brands is important, and we do separate it. So for example, when we're getting feedback from consumers that buy Gatorade, what they're telling us is very different than somebody who's buying Lay's or Quaker. So when we go to the brand itself and we're looking at the brand itself, we do in fact get different data for that purpose, okay? But for consumer shopper, I like to put it all together, okay?
Thank you.
You bet.
Hi, Mike. Francis Chen
Hey,
at
Francis.
the Gordon Engineering Leadership Program at MIT.
Excellent.
So my question is this. Suppose you just met a conference full of amazing people, listened to some lectures and keynotes, panels, and went home with a notebook full of amazing leadership lessons. And now you're faced with the problem of changing yourself to apply those lessons and quickly. What would you do?
Yeah, honestly, the first thing I would do is talk to my wife. No, I'm being absolutely, seriously, because the reason I say that is there's probably two other people I'd talk to as well. I talk to 2 or 3 people I really trust, and I start with my wife because they help me become the most self-aware of who I am, and they're also good sounding boards. One's my wife. There's a couple other folks, a guy named Rick Almquist who's about to retire from the organization. He's a guy that's taught me a lot. We work together. And there's a couple other folks I don't want to mention, but they're people, actually, to be honest, Joe is one of them as well. And I will go to those folks with how I see a situation, how I see my strengths and weaknesses. If I see gaps, which typically is the case, the next thing I will do is I will determine who are the people with the right profile of skills I need to assemble to deal with that situation. And that's usually the first place I go is who's on the team once I realize what my inadequacies are. But honestly, for self-awareness and that, I will go to my wife first and a group of folks, and I will obviously talk to my boss. One of the things in this world I'm in, especially in a new country, I'm very self-aware of what I don't know, and I flag that pretty quickly. So I'd ask you all, you probably want to think about who are your closest advisors, and I'd also say to you, you got to be very self-aware. My guardrail on that is when you got a nervous feeling in your stomach about something, you probably are starting to realize you're in territory you're not as comfortable with, which means you got to get the right team around you, which that's okay, by the way. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
Sir, Midshipman First Class Heinemeier. I'm from St. Antonio, Texas. I go to school at the Naval Academy. In America, we take a lot of use of technology very freely. We have rights that protect our use. Information's very easily spread across the internet. So how do the technology restrictions in China affect how you use PepsiCo reach out to your employers and also your customers?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll answer it this way. What I've seen broadly, and I've listened to people that have been in China a long time, this is what they're telling me about technology in general, okay? Number one is you got to realize that what you thought was a big idea a year ago may not be a big idea now. Because with the technology, things are moving really, really fast, really fast. The second thing we're seeing with technology broadly in China is you got a big leapfrog effect. So as you have this big evolving middle class, you've also got technology like you see here. So the consumer is just going beyond what was already going to be a bit of a linear evolution in North America. E-commerce is an example of that, okay? The other part of it, what I found is we realize that the consumer is saturated with stuff. And so, we candidly, to be very direct to your question, have we had issues with technological integrity and stuff like that? No, we actually haven't. We have no issues with those kind of problems, whether it's with our partners or ourselves. What I would say, though, what I find there is technology has created an ability for every company to put something in front of the consumer there. That's actually the biggest fear I have every day is they just get fatigued with our ideas really fast. That's the biggest challenge I'm facing there.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks.
Hello, I'm Dominika Thanasiad from the University of Richmond. In the university we have three major things, I think. Diversity, horizontal structure, because we all have very similar ages, and very, very limited time. Everybody does a million things. So my question is this. How can we, in an organization, in a university, how do you think someone could enhance the common culture in this horizontal environment with this limited time, using technology as a tool?
So let me ask you a question back and make sure I'm clear. We talk about a horizontal organization. Give me more on that so I
We're
understand.
talking about peers. We're talking about people that like you're not differentiated because of a status. Like for instance, you are in the you have similar backgrounds, like you're with your peers.
I got it. So from a peer group, similarities. Right. Yeah, so a question for you here, I think, is you're looking at your time management as part of the technology in the peer group. I will tell you this. I think the short answer is you're going to probably have to think about your priorities as a person in general. One thing I've had to I constantly regrind every year is what's important to me holistically, not just business, but as a person, what's my vision as a person between many facets of who I am, between faith, family, friends, and business, and then how do I want to spend that time? And that's an exercise you got to stay close to. And I think once you declare that and how you want to manage that, that's going to select where you spread your time. And I'm usually pretty honest with people about that. I really am. I tell them, hey, this is the time I can give, and this is where I'm going to give the time. And that was my point about you got to watch technology that just doesn't make you a doer and a responder to everything. That would be the suggestion I would give you on that. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we got time for one more, and that's it. Okay. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you again, Mike, for everything. My name is Morgan. I'm from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute.
Excellent.
For any industry, there's always going to be a way for the structure of a company to work, and you're working with different people every single day, from the people you're working next to versus the people you've never met. How do you scale your leadership technique and different resources to help you deal with both situations?
Yeah, it's a really good question around, I hinted to this, and I'm going to interpret this way. I think what you're getting is you're dealing with more and more matrixed organizations. And by the way, more and more, I didn't touch on this, more dual reporting as you deal with technology. So you can have somebody reporting to one person, dotted line to other. So what I've done is I've done really a couple things. One is process. So I've used process, whether it's certain cadence of meetings or certain interactions, to bring together those different folks into the same room in the same session to get all the issues out on the table. Because what I found is otherwise you're dealing with a million emails. So I try to hone it into, here's the process, checkpoints, monthly, weekly, quarterly, here's the people, etc. That you're going to need to, as a leader, force that inflection point. Okay, it's a really, by the way, it's a good point because a lot of you are going to really deal with this. The second thing I will do immediately is I will work to reach out and meet those people. So whether it's a meeting, I'll go out of my way to say, I don't know you by face. I've got, you're on these reports, I know your name, but this is a little strange. I don't even know who you are if you walked in the same room. So one of the things we've done as well, we'll have people put their pictures on email, and then we'll try to get face-to-face meetings, so we create a little friendliness or touch into the equation as well. That's also another point. And then, the last thing I would say is you're going to, like I said before, you're going to have to declare where you personally get involved and what you give up to your folks. The reality is connected autonomy and collaboration is the name of the game these days. You're not going to get away from it. It's not a vertical reporting line. I can tell you that right now. So I think process is the key when you got a lot of constituents.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, I think I'm out of time, right? Okay, got it. Thanks, Melissa. Thanks, and I know we got panels next, right?
Sure.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. Thank you.
Sir, thank you for your enlightening remarks. On behalf of the 2015 Naval Academy Leadership Conference, we'd like to present you with a small token of our appreciation.
Thank you. You want me to grab it now? Okay, I don't want to do anything I'm not supposed to do. Hey, this is awesome. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Thanks, Chris.